I'm very happy to be here with Jessica Resch. She is someone that I met fairly recently. And the moment I met her, she just had such energy and she was just such an interesting person. I just said, I got to get you on the podcast. And thank you for coming
Well, I'm
on,
so
Jessica.
excited. Really grateful to be here, Jim.
When I met you, we talked a little bit about what you do for a living, and that's what kind of led to us doing this interview. And you work in acupuncture.
Yes, I'm an acupuncturist. I've been an acupuncturist now for 14, going on 15 years.
Oh, wow. And what's the name of your business?
I had gone by the word spirit healing acupuncture and sort of what
Okay.
I've been the umbrella that I'm working under, but really it's just more Jessica Resch acupuncture.
Okay. Okay. And now, can acupuncture be done remotely or does it have to be done with you and the person in the
Great
same room?
question. Honestly, if you're going to be using the modality of the needles, could be in
Yes.
person, but I believe everything's intention. So I do believe I could sit with you and we could create a space where I could intentionally maybe send energy to an acupuncture point. Mm, I
Wow.
mean, why not?
Wow.
Right? I do believe that's possible.
Why not? I do believe it as well. And it years ago when I had a friend who was in Reiki and she said, "Oh, I have a friend in Australia and I'm going to send him some energy for his sore shoulder." And I just looked at her and I'm like, "Oh, you are out there. You are wacky." But since that time, I have really come to believe that it's real and it's there and you can do that. So that isn't that neat. Now, do most of your people come in or do you do a lot on Zoom?
No, my entire practice is in person.
Okay. And what community are
So
you
I
in?
treat in an area called Eldersburg near Sykesville, Maryland. It's in Carroll, Maryland.
Okay.
Been out there for the entire time, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. That's great. I think it's so nice for you as a practitioner to have your space that you are used to and that you feel good in and it's just a matter of just you have the person come in and you treat them and nothing else changes. It's just a new
Yeah.
person and everything else is the same. So I think that's great. Now, do you have any particular areas of focus of things that you treat? I mean, do you treat the sore shoulders and psychological things? What kind of things do you
That's a
usually
great
treat?
question. I think when I started out, I was just open to treating most everything and anything. Most
Mhm,
people sort of
mhm.
come in with physical pain, but I would say as my career has progressed, I do tend to like to support more of the emotional aspects that show up for people, whether that's anxiety, depression, worry. I have trained also with a woman called Elaine Duncan and something called the Tao of Trauma. So I've learned quite a bit about the nervous system in that way and how dysregulation can happen for people that have experienced all sorts of trauma. So that really informs my practice as well.
Well, you just covered a lot of territory there,
Yeah.
Jessica. So psychological things like depression and
Yeah.
anxiety, right, was one area, and then trauma, which I don't know if it's always involved with anxiety and depression or not, but that's a big area, trauma. Most people have had some trauma.
I would say everybody, and that's what I've learned. We think of extreme traumas, whether it's a car accident or some sort of emotional, physical abuse. But honestly, you could have childhood things, the household you grew up in. Maybe there was alcoholism or addiction or things like that. And that can certainly create patterns of trauma. And when I use the word dysregulation, it's more that the nervous system isn't able to really relax and be in what we call parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. It's like you can get stuck in that sort of fight or flight.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that
Sure.
dysregulation. In other words, someone comes into you, you take a history from
Mhm.
them, right? And then you kind of check out their energy
Yeah.
flow. Now, and when you do that, do you put your hands above their body or on their body, or how do you do
Great
that?
question. For the acupuncture parts of it, I would listen to their pulses. So how
Okay.
we do
Okay.
that is you listen on both wrists. I say listen, I'm going to use terms that might not sound physical.
Oh, no. I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
So I would listen to someone's pulses just to learn what's going on with them from a meridian standpoint and how their energy's flowing from the lens of acupuncture. But really, I would probably venture to say I'm pretty empathic. So when someone's just sitting across from me, it's a sense. A lot of times I might even feel anxiety myself or feel myself start to mimic what I'm picking up on, if that makes sense.
I understand. I understand. Right. You take it on yourself a little bit
Yeah,
so that you can feel what it is they're
for real.
feeling.
And you can pick up on whether someone feels comfortable or not. Like I'm nervous a little bit.
Right.
This is my first podcast ever, so I'm a little
Right.
fidgety and
Right.
you can sort of pick up on somebody's energy in terms of whether they're grounded or there's a stillness or
Definitely. Definitely. And that would be called their chi,
yeah,
right? You evaluate their
their energy.
chi.
Yeah, yeah.
And the dysregulation, does that mean that things aren't flowing the way they're supposed to? What does that mean?
It kind of means like being stuck in fight or flight. So we have that
Oh,
part of the
okay.
nervous system, the sympathetic part of our nervous system, which we need, right? If you and I were standing on a road corner right now, and some truck was barreling towards us, we would need to move, right? So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
always
Right.
accessible to us. That ability to just flee or fight to protect ourselves is like a primal aspect, I guess. But
Right.
certain ways of being in life, being on constant stress or constant deadlines, you can kind of get stuck in that fight or flight and not be able to let it go and rest. So dysregulation is part of that, not being able to come out of that cycle.
I know someone who basically most of their day to day life is spent thinking about things that have gone wrong or things that have frustrated them or problems that they have. To me, I think that that person would be dysregulated.
That's
Is that
I
accurate or
think
not?
from an emotional standpoint, I think that is accurate. They're stuck in one type of way of being. And that would be a
Right.
form of dysregulation because they're not able
I
to move
see.
out of that
I see.
emotional state of worry or fear.
Right. Right. It's so interesting to me that you do this evaluation by the pulses. Now, do you check the pulses with a stethoscope? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Is it,
I don't.
it or with your fingers, or how do
Yeah,
you do it?
just with my fingertips. Just hold your hand, and there's several positions on each wrist that I would connect with that tell me something about the different energies involved in through that lens of acupuncture, which connect in a lot with the seasons. That's a whole like
Right, I wanna get into
sure.
that, talking about that in a little while, yeah. You can by feeling the pulse, is it the strength of the pulse or
Yeah.
the frequency, or
Yes.
what is it about the pulse
You're
that's
good,
different?
Jim. You're good at this. There it's the pace. It is that. It's like the quality of it, the speed of it. Yeah. Is it empty? Does it feel thin? Like for me, sometimes I have my
Oh,
own language. It isn't necessarily how I learned it in
yes.
school, but does it feel feathery? Like I can just press through it and there's nothing there? Or does it feel wiry? It's chai.
Oh, that is neat. I have a friend who is probably still suffering from a a condition where she was exposed to a very toxic chemical that was in the wall, in the creosote or whatever, and it got wet, and so she's there working in this office, and all day long this creosote is filling up her room, and she became very, very sensitive to all different types of smells and things like that. She was trying everything to get a break from it. Someone suggested that she may get relief from
Yeah.
acupuncture. And so, and this is a person that is like Miss Science, and I would never think that she would even be open to
Yeah.
trying it, but that's how bad she felt. So she went to the acupuncturist, and this is a story that she told is the woman said, "Let me talk to your hand. Let me talk to your hand." So she grabbed the pulse.
Oh,
That's most what she was doing. She's like, "I'll talk to the hand." And then she goes, "Oh, you must have a stoppage or something." And sure enough, wasn't she able to cure that? And my friend said she felt the energy break through the clog
Yeah.
or whatever. So, so when this super skeptic was talking about that, I'm like, wow, well, that's can't get more believable than that because that's person would never have said that. And so let's say that you do feel like with my friend, you feel the pulse and you're like, oh, I think your energy is really not flowing
So
well.
when
But
I would
what
feel that, and it would like for your friend, I would wonder about her lungs, right? So in when I listen
oh,
to pulses on the left hand, it tells me something about the heart, the small intestine, the liver, the gallbladder.
okay.
Right hand, it's different organs. So you press a certain area and you're going to feel, oh, like with your friend, I would think her lung would be in distress.
Okay.
And how that might show up is it might feel deficient or like low energy, or it might feel sometimes you want the pulse to feel round and paced. Sometimes it might feel a little edgy. Like something's not quite right there.
You know what this reminds me of is I tried to do recording of
Uh-huh.
music and I did a lot of listening to people talk about how does it work and all that sort of stuff. They they would play something and then they'll say, okay, I'm going to do something different. And then they would say, how about this? And it sounds so much better. And I couldn't tell the difference at all. You
Right.
know, so, but the thing is they develop that
Mhm.
ability to listen to it in such a way that they could really tell the difference. And that's you. You know, I could feel that same pulse with a person. I wouldn't have any clue about it. But you can really tell the difference from feeling it.
It is
Wonderful.
really neat,
It's
and to
wonderful.
think back as a baby acupuncturist, how I have gotten better, if you will, or I built
Right.
that
Right.
muscle, and yet I probably will be building that muscle the rest of my life as long as I
Yes.
practice,
Yes.
for sure. Because
Yes.
there are
Yes.
ministers out there, and it's never quite feel that way.
Well, I'm sure that you got tremendous abilities. You went to high school and then you went to college and then you worked in the corporate world for some
I
time.
did. I grew up out in Carroll County, and I went to a county school out there, South Carroll, and went to
That's
in
Maryland,
Maryland, yep, in
right?
Maryland, and I went on to get my bachelor's in communication arts, and what does that mean? That was like PR, communication, news, marketing, that kind of
A
stuff,
lot of
yeah,
things. A lot of things.
and I wound up getting my first real job was with a government contractor, a federal
Mm.
consultant, and I wound up having this 16-year career working with federal clients and helping them with their like a lot of environmental programs with the army that needed to tell the public about what they were doing, their
Uh-huh.
remediation efforts or what have you. And so I was part of that team that would like do their public meetings and write their newsletters and develop their videos and
Oh,
do all that.
so you developed a lot of communication
Yeah,
skills
I would say
doing
I
that work.
did.
Verbal communication and
Yeah,
written, right?
verbal, written,
Yeah.
team
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah.
skills, people leadership skills, all that good stuff.
Right.
It was a great opportunity. I traveled a lot, sort of all over, which I loved. But I
Mhm.
always, and I don't know if this is the time to say this, but I always sort of knew this is not it. This is not, I just had this deep yearning for a calling, I guess, or a vocation. And I did really well in it, but I didn't feel like, I just always, like from the very beginning, felt like this is not it. This is not it, you know?
This is exactly what I wanted to talk about is just that thing, is that you as a very accomplished professional person could have very easily said, I'm making good money. I got a good job. They like me. I'm doing
Yeah.
okay. You could just have sat with
Mhm.
that forever until retirement. But something, yeah, like you said, it just wasn't it. It wasn't right. So what came along to nudge you into looking into
Yeah.
something else?
Well, I think I was always seeking. I would do classes or read books and just like trying to figure out, well, where do I sort of light up? And it was, gosh, how many years into my career I was having regular reflexology, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with reflexology. It's
I'm not.
kind of like massage for the feet, but imagine the feet
Okay.
represent the body, if you will. It's a form of healing,
Yep.
energy healing, but it's through your feet. And I did deal with some depression after many years of working. And that manifested for me in like work, work, work. But then I didn't have energy for anything else in my life.
Okay.
And it was hard to sort of rise up other than work. And I went to, her name was Maureen Champion, and she changed my life. I don't know if it was her particular, when we're in school, they say, you'll develop Jessica puncture or Maureen puncture. You develop your own way of being.
Oh, that's great. That's
And
great.
this acupuncturist that I went to, I started in May, and by September, I knew I wanted to study it. That's how profound of an experience I had. It was almost like, Jim, it was like the blinds that had been just shut over my
Yeah.
soul, my heart, my eyes for so long started to just do this a little bit. And I was like, oh, I'm noticing that tree again. I'm seeing the sky. I was like, felt a little freer in myself where I had
Yeah. Yeah.
been feeling pretty hopeless.
That must have been amazing to have that daylight kind of creep into your life and then be like, "Oh, that feels good.
It was
We should have more of that,
It's
please."
so profound. Now, I went to her. Now, that's the only thing you got to mention too with acupuncture. Sometimes it takes a lot of it. When you first start, it's almost like repatterning the flow of your energy. So,
Okay.
with PT, when you're building a new muscle, you go twice a week. It's similar. You're building something new. And so to have that start to anchor in, sometimes you have to do a lot of it. And I did. I went
Okay.
weekly for 2 months at least, 2.5 months.
Okay.
And luckily, I was able to do that, and it was profound. And Maureen, this acupuncturist, she's no longer practicing now, but Maureen Champion, she would impart the spirit of the medicine to me. She would tell me like the acupuncture name point, say, for example, is Greater Mountain Stream. And what does that evoke in you? And what's that about? And she taught me so much about the 5 elements, which I'm sure we'll get into, and the
Yes.
spirit of the medicine, which to me was poetic and profound and beautiful. And it just lit up my spirit.
Well, I think the fact that she was combining that teaching of you with the fact that you were feeling profound effects from it, that combination must have just been
It
gangbusters.
was.
Because it's one thing if you're reading it in a book, but it's another thing if she's saying, "You know that great feeling that you're having? That's
Yeah.
this." I can see where you would have like,
Yeah.
"Wow, I'd like to do that for other people."
For sure. And she, as a person, I think what I've learned about myself is that I am always wanting to dig deeper and
Mm,
wanting to find meaning in life and in things. And so she was that for me too. And her way of practicing, she was very deep, very spiritual, very present. And that inspired me tremendously.
I think it's so wonderful that you've expressed how the acupuncturist's individual abilities and spiritual abilities really has a lot to do with what the experience of the patient or client is. And but let's go back a little bit to what the heck is acupuncture? Not everybody knows about it. Everybody kind of knows there's something about needles and blah blah
Yeah.
blah, but they don't really know much about it. And it my understanding is that Chinese medicine, or
Yeah,
what do you call
traditional
it?
Chinese medicine, and you're right, it's ancient, it's
Okay.
thousands of years old. Yeah, it's hard because at the beginning, there weren't books available till
Right.
really recently. So a lot of what was taught was through the oral tradition and through observation. So there are some ancient texts that
That
guide this medicine. But honestly, we
mhm.
weren't taught a lot of that.
That's pretty wild that this very fulfilling and wonderful medical treatment has been going from before there were books,
Yes.
right? No one had a printing press yet, so it was really passed on verbally, but that's it. Ancient really means
Ancient.
ancient here, you know?
That's why sometimes I will like, people say, "Oh, alternative." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's been around. It's been running a long time."
It's not new wave anything, it's old
Right.
wave. And now it has to do with the flow of energy. We talked a little bit
Yes.
about
And what
that
does that mean
earlier.
really,
And,
right?
yeah, what does the flow of energy mean?
Yeah.
What's that all
Well,
about?
if you think about us as humans, we have our physical form and we have our spirit. When we pass, the body is lifeless And there's this idea that there is energy, we call it qi through the lens of Chinese medicine, that animates life, right? But you can't see that.
Right.
You can feel that, just like we feel heat or we might feel the wind. These things that you can't really see, but you can feel. That's
Right.
this thing
Right.
called energy. And if you study metaphysical stuff, everything is energy. The leaf of the tree,
Yes.
what have
Yeah.
you. And I'm sure you've done a lot of stuff on that. So it's this idea that we
Yes.
have energy within us that animates our life, right? And so in Chinese medicine, it's this idea that there are 12 main pathways, if you will. So you can imagine like
Okay.
mini rivers or, roadways or something like that. There are two more. So there's 12 main ones. I won't get into the other two, but
Okay.
by listening, when we were talking about the pulses, I'm able to tell, well, which of those 12 have enough or aren't maybe flowing or maybe feel a little stuck. There's all these different ways I can sort of interpret the flow of someone's energy.
Okay.
And it's also rooted in the seasons. Okay. What does that mean? So right now, you and I are in this mid-winter, 20 degrees, whatever it is out there.
Yeah.
It's very
Yes.
different than, say, June 21st, right? If we
Yes.
were to
Yes.
sit here and think about the summer, the daylight, the warmth, the activity, the energy, the action, the growth on the trees and the ground, that has a different feeling to it than where we sit today. And so in Chinese medicine, it's really about, can we live? We have those energies in us. We have the gifts of winter within us. And I can go into that a little more. The gifts of spring, gifts of summer, late summer, and fall.
Yeah. Can you go into that a little bit
Sure.
more? Because I have heard this
Yeah.
before,
Sure.
but I couldn't bite onto it. I couldn't grab
Yeah.
onto it. How do I, as Jim LePan, just going down the street, I've got winter energies
Yeah.
in me, right?
So I would say,
Tell
so
me about that.
winter, it has a lot to do with in each of these seasons, there are 5 of them in Chinese medicine. There are an emotion, a taste, a color, organs that relate to that. There's all these what we call correspondences. So in winter, it has a lot to do with kidneys and the bladder, has a lot to do with fear, but the opposite of fear is courage. So you might be somebody that is like fearless. And I would say anyone who takes
Okay.
on a podcast has a tremendous amount of courage figuring this
Right.
out, right?
Right.
To
Right.
have the will to be like, I'm curious about this. I'm going to figure this out. That to me is like a wintry,
Yeah.
energetic thing. My life,
Okay. Okay.
right? It
Yeah. I'm gonna make it
Yeah,
happen
it's
somehow. Yeah.
willpower. It's like staying power. It's like you think of, so winter energy is the element of water. And you think of the
Okay.
power of water, of the sea, even of the snow that right now is like coating where I am in Maryland, all over the ground. Like it's
Mhm. Mhm.
immense. It's created such stillness around.
Right.
Those
Right.
are like winter slash water element attributes, if you will.
Okay. I'm getting it.
So,
I'm
like,
getting it.
Jim
I
has that, you know?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I were treating you, you could be someone that this isn't you, but someone that's frozen with fear, can't
Okay.
make a move, can't make a decision, is too afraid to live life, to
Yeah.
embrace.
Afraid to be wrong, afraid to be criticized, afraid of
Right. So
everything.
I would see that as a maybe perhaps there's other probably factors at play elementally, but could their water be frozen? Do they need a little bit of the summer, the fire to warm that water up?
And how would you apply that
Really, the
with summer?
pulses would tell me. I could listen to the pulse
Okay.
and I would follow that as my leading first. And to see when we were taught when we listened to the pulses too, there's an order, there's a flow of things. And so when you listen to the pulse, you can find out if there's a block in between, say, one meridian and another. Then there's a
Mhm.
protocol of points that you would do to free that energy to flow again.
Okay. And the meridians, those are those 12 or 14 rivers kind
Yes.
of
That's the
going through
body.
our body?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's an
Yeah.
example of
And
winter, and then there are
yeah.
4
Okay.
others that have similar characteristics. So spring is happening actually in early February, Groundhog Day around that time. That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beginning, the awakening of spring, really. From the winter solstice, December 21st, the sun starts coming back.
Right.
So that's like a rising energy. And Jim, I have a poster here. I don't know
Well,
if it will help to show you this or not.
I'll tell you what, let's finish up today's episode and let's start off with that next time because this is a perfect spot. I want to continue to move on with these. This is wonderful. And thank you so much. Let's finish up and go and get back to work
Great.
again.
Thank you, Jim.